Kane is in the building.
Hello, Bucks fans. Welcome to Buck Life, the hardcore Milwaukee Buck podcast made by hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans for hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans. And I'm just really into hardcore, if you can't tell. Today, joining me, as always, is my co-host, Chuck Schilling. How you doing tonight, Chuck?
You know, in a much better mood than it was not quite exactly 1 week ago, but about 1 week ago we were recording our last episode. The Bucks were 0-2 at the time. Little did we know they were about to go 0-3, and can't complain right now, sitting at 4-3. So in a pretty good mood tonight.
Yeah, the landscape has definitely changed in Buck Nation since the last time we recorded a podcast. Joining us today is another repeat offender. It's our good friend Nick Honick joining us, a beer connoisseur. All-around hipster and good guy. How we doing, Nick?
Hey, great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, as Chuck said, the Bucks are sitting at 4-3 as we record this episode. We're recording just after they beat Brooklyn at home. It's a 4-game winning streak. Who have we beaten the last week, Chuck? Why don't you give us a little rundown?
Yeah, the winning streak actually started in Brooklyn against these Brooklyn Nets, so we beat them twice in the 4 games. Sandwiched in between there, we beat the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. The Knicks game was a little bit of a revenge game because we got blown out on opening night, so it was kind of nice to go there and beat them. The other 2 games, you know, it's good to win them, but they are winless teams. You know, Philadelphia and the Nets, neither one has won a game this year, so you got to beat those teams, though. And we did. Absolutely.
You know, it's easy to say the competition was not good, but as you said, if you lose those games, that sticks out a lot more. They got a W. They got what they needed to do. I don't know. It seems like they're still trying to gel a little bit. Now that we're getting a little bit back to full health, you can see the gel. You can see the gel. It looks sticky. No. You can see the chemistry starting to build up, and they've gotten a lot of consistency from Greg Monroe, although he did have kind of a stinker against the Knicks. And Giannis has been consistent as well. Right away, we want to talk about the return of Jabari Parker. That's such a huge piece
Obviously,
of the Bucks puzzle.
the biggest, other than the 4-game winning streak, that is the biggest bit of news this week, and that's actually probably bigger than the 4-game winning streak.
So, Nick, your thoughts on Jabari as he's slowly making his comeback here?
You know, it's really exciting to have him back. Really bummed out. I know we talked about how we were bummed out that he changed his hairdo.
Hey, he looks chubby with the clean lettuce.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that part of it, but it's good to see him back out there. You know, he's kind of struggling with his shot a little bit, but he seems to be kind of getting it, and they've been slowly increasing his minutes, and it's exciting to see this team kind of start to get back to full health. We still haven't been there yet, I don't think.
Well, and like you said, it's something that's going to happen slowly. Jason Kidd, from before the season even started, had talked about how he's going to be on kind of a pitch count, a minutes restriction, and it's slowly going to go up. It appears to be on the up and up. I believe he went from, on the second night of a back-to-back, from 17 minutes one night to 24 minutes the next night. So I don't think it'll be too long before Jabari's logging 28, 30, 32 minutes, and then at that point he's pretty much back to a regular workload.
Yeah, I was speaking of the minute counts because I was just verifying this before we started recording. You know, it was just over 16 minutes in the game against Philadelphia, 17 and a half last night, and then just over 24 minutes tonight. It's really impressive to me that on a back-to-back coming off the injury, he increased his minutes by almost 7 full minutes. 24 minutes, that's, you know, if you're in foul trouble, that might be what your starter plays if they're in foul trouble. So it's not, you know, ideally your starters are playing the 35 minutes, like I believe Giannis logged about 35 tonight. But, 24 minutes for his 3rd game back, I'm pretty happy with that, especially on the second night of a back-to-back.
Well, and there was some talk that, I heard people saying that he might not even play the second night of back-to-back. So.
Yeah, there was some speculation on that might be a part of the slow rehab process. But
yeah, I had heard that rumor. in regards to the shooting, because Nick mentioned his shot is not quite falling, and I had that feeling as well. And certainly in the first game he was 1 for 6, but I was looking at the box scores here. In game 2 he was 3 for 6, and tonight he was 4 for 7. So that's not terrible. He's shooting at above 50% other than that first game.
And they're high percentage shots. He's taking it to the rim. He's
had a couple nice
shots.
dunks. He had a couple
great
nice dunks, and there was one play today that really stuck out in my mind. It was a fast break, and he was driving down the lane, and he laid it up, and he did a nice up and under move to get around Brooke. I think it was Brooke Lopez who was coming in for the block shot, and then he landed with full force on his legs out of bounds, and
it showed
the confidence in the leg there.
Sure, and the combination of what Jabari brings to the table, which is he can be powerful, he can be athletic, he can have some finesse to his game, all those things. And then you mentioned the dunk against the Knicks. It made both of us smile, but I had a huge smile on my face when he took it up. I mean, there's a few things about this play that stood out, but when he took it baseline, spun underneath the hoop and dunked it, he had this cheesing grin the entire time running back to the floor, and it's great to see that the confidence is starting to come back. But what I also loved about that play was how happy the bench was for him, and you could see it build. They all stood up. They were all cheering and smiling for him. So I think you had talked about it on Twitter, Nick, that this team really seems like they like each other and that the chemistry is there. And, there's not a lick of selfishness to this team, except for maybe Grievous Vasquez, but we'll get into that later.
So most of the team has no selfishness.
I guess my question to you guys would be: so we've seen 4 games of Jabari, 3 games of Jabari. Prior to the season, we didn't know, when he was going to be back. So in these 3 games, is he where you kind of expected him to be? I know his first game back was against Philly, and the Grand Admiral, our good friend, the Grand Admiral Dan, was telling me that he was thinking Jabari was going to score 20. I don't know if he was just messing with me or not, but where do you feel like he's at? Do you feel like he's where you expected him, or?
I think it's funny you mentioned that. Sorry, that was a Gary Wolfel impression, real quick there. I would think that maybe there was some casual fans that would think that he's going to come back and be the number 2 overall pick that we thought that, or he was going to be, but you got to be patient with this. And if you do have any friends that are maybe casual fans, kind of remind them that this is a major reconstructive surgery that he's coming back from, and maybe he could play more minutes and take more shots, but it's clear they're thinking long term with this team, which is awesome to hear, because in years past it wasn't really the case. I can recall right off the bat Ersan Ilyasova basically coming out after the season and saying he was forced back into action by Scott Skiles and company. So they're thinking about the puzzle long term. Like I said, the pieces to the puzzle fitting in. He's at where I thought he would be. It's strange because athletically and just body type, I really thought he was going to focus on trying to tone down and maybe being in a little bit better shape, but he probably is. It's just he's actually gained weight since he came in. So it's clear that he's going to play power forward, but he's showing the bits of potential that you want to see. And I think by mid-season that maybe he will be around that 20-point per game mark.
Yeah, I think he's exactly where I expected. Coming back from an injury, first, when we were talking prior to the season, we thought maybe he wouldn't even be back till January, because you're looking at, usually with an ACL tear, you're looking at 12 months, which would have been January. So he's back early. Yes, he's playing limited minutes. He's playing limited minutes, but he scored 2 points on 1 of 6 the first game, 6 points on 3 of 6, and tonight 8 points on 4 of 7. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't really gotten to the line. I think he had a couple and ones where he shot a couple free throws and he hasn't hit them yet. Certainly a lot of his baskets have been right at the hoop, dunks, layups, and his mid-range shot isn't quite falling yet. So that is, when Nick said his shot's not falling, it's not completely inaccurate, but overall his shooting percentage isn't terrible. So yeah, I think he's about where I thought he was going to be for coming back. I think tonight he probably played more than I expected. We saw it in the past couple games he played to start the game, and then he came in later in the second quarter. Tonight he started, I believe, every quarter. He played about 6 minutes at the start of every quarter, and that's how he got to his 24 minutes. So certainly feels like Jason Kidd's kind of easing him back in. I'm sure they're going to be very interested in how he feels tomorrow and Monday after playing the 24 minutes, if there's any soreness, tired. I don't know what kind of checkups they have on him, but I'm assuming there'll be no setbacks, and we'll see him out there. The next game would be Tuesday against Boston.
Yeah, my one gripe would be, and I think me and Nick were talking about this during the first quarter against Brooklyn tonight, was that I'd like to see a little bit more confidence in the shooting. Him and Giannis both had a lot of open looks at threes early. And they're both unselfish players, which is great. But for me, I'd like to see them take those shots. Maybe they're not going to hit them, but at least have the gonads to take them. Because long term, you want them to shoot open threes if they're going to give them to you. So build the confidence, take the shots. That's all I ask.
Well, and to me, he's been only in 3 games this year. All 3 games were wins. But he wasn't in during winning time in any of those games. And I know the future that we all see is obviously him and Giannis are the 2 givens and the 2 guarantees of players that will be playing during, the final 7 minutes of a close game. And so, I'll be eager to see when we're ready to insert him into those kind of situations, and I hope that's sooner than later. Right now, it's just kind of seems like we're just kind of doing the training wheels thing, and it'll be interesting to see when those come off. The minute limit restriction kind of goes away, and we try to win games with him.
Yeah, and I think at this point it's just a minute restriction, and no more than the attitude or trusting him, anything like that. I think it's purely a minute situation for him. It's
right, but this is a team that has only played close games this season. So even if you've got one of your best players on a minute restriction, then maybe he doesn't come out to start the second half, because you're saving those minutes for later on in the game when you need one of the best players on your team. So I've been always a little puzzled by Kidd's lineups. So I'm not sure that this is, and I don't think this is a reflection of Kidd, but I guess I want to see him in there when it counts.
Well,
yeah.
He has a skill set that you would like to see as the closer type of player, or at least be somebody that's going to command some double teams or command some attention. As you said, I'm right there with you. I hope that soon enough he's one of the crunch time players, because I don't know how much longer I can watch Grievous Vasquez. Again, we're going to get into General Grievous and his stellar play so far to start the year. But you mentioned Giannis. He's the other linchpin. We have to talk about the season that he's having, because by all accounts, at least early, it looks like he has taken that next step, and that he could be possibly as early as this year that all-star level player. To me, what stood out is the consistency in his game. Last year, in his rookie season, he'd show you the flashes, he'd show you the potential, and then maybe have a stinker or two in between. But now it seems that he's scoring in spite of the rest of the team. His field goal attempts are pretty low for somebody who's putting up near 20 a game. That's something that's got to go up. Again, we're going to talk about Vasquez later, but just tonight, Giannis played, I think, 35 minutes and had 8 field goal attempts. Regardless of the rest of the team, that can't happen. He needs to get more shots up. But by comparison, Grievous Vasquez went 0 for 10 tonight. So Grievous off the bench gets more shot attempts than Giannis. I think Bayless did too. That's got to change for me. But I'm going to keep it positive. Giannis is looking like an all-star, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, there was a stat going around, and sometimes, and I think this is an example of it, you get people who will cherry pick stats. So there was a stat going around on Twitter earlier. I saw it on Twitter and Facebook of only 4 players in NBA history under the age of 21 have had 4 consecutive games of 17 points and 5 rebounds. 17 points is kind of a random number, but I guess you got to go somewhere. But those 4 players: LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So. And he was at 4. That streak was broken today because he only got 11 points tonight. So that streak is officially
thanks,
over.
Grievous.
But in terms of that, it was LeBron I think had 9 in a row when I saw the thing, and I think Durant had 6 or 7, and Anthony Davis had 5, and Giannis had 4. So no matter what, if you want to say they cherry picked some stats to get down to 17, why not 20? Because Giannis wouldn't qualify at 20.
Well, and I think the reason they cherry picked those stats because the other guys that were listed in that were
good,
Anthony
yes.
Davis, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. So that's not bad company to be a part of.
Right, exactly, and you see that all the time. I love when you're watching a game and the announcers will pull out some random stat of this guy's gotten 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and this, and it's a record for the most games in a row with those stats, and it's like, well, those stats don't mean anything.
That could be your definition of deception. One that comes to mind right away is, and it's relevant to the Milwaukee Bucks, is I can't remember the exact amount, but there's only a short list of players that have scored 50 points in their rookie seasons, and I believe every single player on that list is a Hall of Famer and Brandon Jennings. So there we go.
Right.
Cherry pick all you want.
When I think of Giannis's season so far, it's been really encouraging to see him out there playing. That fiery player that we've gotten used to seeing. He's that guy. I'd like him to be a little less tentative. And the one thing is, like, he's so able to get these shots around the rim, and it's still like the real backbreaker is making 100% of those, and it still seems like sometimes his touch around the rim just
gets a little scared or nervous.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's been multiple times this year where there's been plays where it's like he's basically, it's a layup and he just kind of overlays it or underlays it or whatever. I think that's something that'll improve, and I think that's just a real backbreaker. When you think of the other team, he's a really hard guy to guard. And when he starts making those shots even at a higher clip than he is now, even though his shooting percentage is pretty good this year, I think he's just going to get better and better. It's so much fun to watch.
He also hit a 3 tonight that was like an out-of-rhythm 3, which was great to see. I mean, he kind of dribbled to his right, stepped into it, and it wasn't like, okay, I'm shooting this because I'm wide open.
Yeah.
I'm shooting this because I'm shooting this kind of thing. So
yeah, 1 for 3 total from 3-point today, 3 for 5 from 2, so 4 for 8 overall. But definitely taking a nice step forward. That was another one of those kind of cherry pick stats and this one actually at least used 20 points per game. There were only 3 players going into tonight averaging 20 points per game and shooting above 55%, and those 3 players were obviously Steph Curry, who's kind of playing out of
He's pretty good.
He's playing out of his damn mind this year so far. The second player is Blake Griffin, who's also off to a phenomenal start for the LA Clippers, and the third one being Giannis. So 3 players going into tonight. Giannis's field goal percentage and scoring average are going to dip a little bit with the 11 points and 50% shooting, but they won't take too much of a hit. But he may fall out of that category right there. But even still, that's he's right on the cusp of those numbers, and those are pretty nice numbers. And again, the names that you're throwing him around with there are impressive names, because Steph Curry and Blake Griffin are already all-stars. And Steph Curry's obviously the current reigning MVP, and the way he's playing now, he's got to be a front runner for it right now.
I was talking about Steph Curry. He might be the most fun player to watch in the NBA, and maybe that I've ever seen, because he just does things on the court that are ridiculous NBA or NBA Jam type things. Just dribble around 5 guys. I don't know. I could go on about Steph all day. But Nick, you talked about Giannis's personality and how he's got that fieriness to his game. I had a feeling last year after Jabari went out that maybe this was going to be the time that Giannis was going to decide that this is my team. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what we're seeing, because in Jabari's absence, I think it kind of hit Giannis that he needs to be that guy. Jabari's personality, I don't know if it's as such that he can be as fiery as Giannis or kind of lift the team on his shoulders. So if it takes the pressure off Jabari that maybe he can be Robin to Giannis's Batman, I'm really, really happy with that. I don't know. Is this Giannis's team?
Well, that it's interesting. Like last season, before Jabari got hurt, I remember I would always just kind of try to watch for interaction between the two of those guys, because whether one's Batman and one's Robin, or whether they're kind of
you were like Dr. Phil. I mean, you were analyzing.
Yeah, I was analyzing it. I was watching it really closely. I think Giannis is obviously has a bigger sample size in his career and everything like that. And I think it is becoming his team. But I think for this to work, it's going to have to be a Steph Curry, Klay Thompson kind of thing where, some nights Giannis might be off. He might have a tough matchup. And then those got to be the nights that Jabari gets after it. So it's great to see this kind of progression from Giannis. And what I'm hoping is that a little later on in this season and definitely early next season, we start to see games like Giannis is having from Jabari where he's just kind of taken over.
Yeah, I certainly, I think we all, if I say the Giannis angry face, I think anyone who's a Bucks fan knows what we're talking about that. And that kind of made an appearance starting late last season. I think it was actually against the Knicks, and Carmelo Anthony was the first time we really saw it out there in effect. And I've seen that more this season where he'll hit a big shot or make a big defensive play, and he kind of gives that angry face that Giannis has shown us. And certainly it seems that he is growing into that alpha dog mentality. And I hope that Jabari has some of that in him. We don't know. We haven't really had a large enough sample size to see whether he does or doesn't. But it's certainly nice to see it from Jabari on Giannis on a consistent basis. So going forward, I think it's got to be a two-headed monster here for the Bucks with Greg Monroe. Let's not short sell Greg Monroe. I think he's been better than any of us expected coming into this season so far. At least for me, I don't want to speak for you guys. He's been consistent. 20. I think he's averaging 20 points and 8 or 9 boards. He's got to be. He's not quite at 20 and 10, but he's really close. And especially the way he looked in preseason. He didn't look all that good in preseason. So yeah, I'm certainly impressed with him. And I think going forward, my vision for the team is a kind of a double-headed monster in Giannis and Jabari with supporting roles by Monroe, Middleton, and whoever we end up with at point guard. Because what we've seen of it this season, and he's injured right now, I don't want to kick a man while he's down, but what we've seen of MCW now, he's not really taking that step we'd hoped he might be capable of.
What do you guys think of, I know we're talking a lot about kind of offensively. How do you feel about Giannis's defense so far this season?
I feel that Giannis has the potential to be a great defender. He's not there yet.
Yeah.
He has a lot of great defensive plays that make you jump out of your seat.
Yep.
I mean, block shots, and he's got those long arms. He can just kind of poke the ball away. But on the ball, again, he looks like he gets a little bit too aggressive, too excited at times, and he does have a lot of dumb fouls. But
he picks up a lot of fouls.
And, again, for a raw 20-year-old, you expect that. To me, it's just a matter of time before he's dominating the game on both ends of the floor. Not to sell the guy short or anything.
Yeah, I agree. You need some consistency there on defense. He picks up the fouls when there's nothing wrong with picking up a foul in basketball. You're going to pick them up unless you're LeBron, who picks up fouls at a historically low rate. But he's going to get fouls, and some of the fouls he takes, they're head scratchers, to say the least. But I think he had a really good defensive game just against New York last night. Carmelo shot 5 for 15, didn't score a single point in the fourth quarter, and it was largely Giannis guarding him most of the game. So he shows flashes, and I'd like to see some more consistency there.
The fouls that bother me is like, so, and yet the last two games, New York and Brooklyn are perfect illustrations. He's matched up on Carmelo and Joe Johnson, and those guys are kind of in the post on him, and they're kind of like trying to back him in, and he's kind of like so long, he's kind of like reaching around them and trying to like swat the ball out. And I think over the last 2 nights he's picked those fouls up, probably two a game, and like, you're not going to create a steal that way,
sure,
especially on such talented ball handlers like that.
Well, and it's a shame because he's got the right idea to use his length as a defender, but he should use it going straight up. You don't need to create stupid fouls, because a reach-in they're going to see. Even if you don't touch the guy, a lot of times you're going to get that call, particularly against veterans, as you said, like Carmelo and Joe Johnson. So I think part of that is just learning the little nuances, the unspoken things that you just kind of have to go through. And even by referee, sometimes you have to feel out that particular official and what kind of game he's going to call. It's like a strike zone with an umpire.
Well, and overall, the defense this year, I think they're still kind of trying to piece it together and still trying to figure it out. when you look back at Chuck and I were both at the Philadelphia game, and it was like they were just giving up open threes in bunches. I don't doubt that Sweeney has a plan. I don't doubt that he's watching this and trying to recalibrate this defense. And certainly we've been injured, and we've had players that haven't been in. And when Chris Copeland has to try to play defense, or Gravis Vasquez has to, that is not going to be good. So ultimately, one of the areas I'm worried about is on the defensive end, and I don't want us to regress from our second ranking last year to 15 or 17. We've got to give these guys some time to gel and get together and get healthy, but I want to start to see that defense pick up a little bit here.
Yeah, certainly. When they say defense wins, it does. In the playoffs, the defensive intensity kicks up even another notch. So we've talked about 3-point shooting going into the season. We were all concerned about the offense, 3-point shooting. That's how teams were winning and are winning still. Golden State, San Antonio, Cleveland, etc. But the defense has not been where we want it. It's certainly better than where it was a week ago. The first two games we gave up 125 points. The last few opponents in our winning streak, we've given up. I have to run the numbers to average it out, but I'd have to imagine it's average maybe 95, if that. So we're certainly making strides and progress. Some of that helps by playing bad teams. But yeah, the defense needs to come around as a team, and even tonight there were a lot of wide open 3-point shots available for the Nets, and some of them they just didn't take, and some of them they missed, and so yeah, let's see that kick it up a notch.
I wonder if that has to do with personnel, because they're still trying to get healthy, and you have a lot of guys still learning the system. Sometimes you have to play the cards that you're dealt. So you look at guys who aren't great defensive players, Grievous Vasquez, Jared Bayless, to name two in that second unit. What I noticed the Bucks do a lot, especially on ball swings, is it's kind of like in football. You blitz the quarterback. You send everybody all out. And the way that you do that, maybe you beat that in the NFL, is with a quick slant or you throw a screen pass. What in the NBA, it's the ball swing. If you keep moving it around and they're coming at basically blitzing you each time, eventually you're going to hit somebody that's open. So I wonder if, like I said, that has to do with them still learning the system and just not having great defenders, so kind of trying to just throw a wrench into their game plan.
So are you saying that Bo Ryan wants to coach against the Bucks defense? With his
Probably. He would be licking his chops.
The Bo Ryan swing offense versus the Bucks swing defense.
Well, and we've had a couple games against Washington and Toronto, playoff teams from last season. And then we've played some teams where the shots just weren't falling. Philadelphia, those shots aren't falling. The Knicks, the Nets, those shots aren't falling for them. And they don't got guys that you would typically expect are going to hit a ton of threes against you. But there are teams in the NBA that are dangerous, And that ball, even like when I think back to the Philadelphia game, that ball kept finding the last guy you would want it to find. I think it was your boy Stauskas out there, Jake. And
Sauce Castillo.
Yeah, and the ball kept finding him, and he would have the open three, and it's like, this can't be the defense that Sean Sweeney is anticipating. So I think you're exactly right. That's what's happening, and we've got to do something about it. I know that part of this team is our length. That's one of the reasons why we feel like we can recover on those plays. But I feel like on the defensive end right now, we're running ourselves ragged, and we're still giving up wide open three-pointers.
And, it's not just as far as playing the cards that you're dealt, as far as who you have available and their defensive skill set. But I think it goes a lot to do with the scouting. I don't think you would see this type of defensive scheme against a team like Golden State, who can just bomb on you all day. If you do, that's going to be a long night. I do think they're going to figure it out. One topic I want to get to before we talk a little bit about the arena is just the Bucks' second unit. Now, this isn't I think the same second unit that you're going to see. We saw it last year with Kidd. He likes to play around. He likes to change the rotations up. But there's been a few alarming things as far as how we've handled the second unit. First off is this Jared Bayless, Grievous Vasquez, not just them playing, which, that was going to happen, but playing together. Bayless mostly playing point guard, and then Grievous Vasquez playing the 2 guard. We've been pretty lucky, I think, during this winning streak because these two, Bayless, had a good game or a couple good games in that streak, but they've had a habit of trying to shoot us out of games. Let's throw out some numbers here. Grievous Vasquez, who we, by the way, gave up a first-round pick, granted it was a protected, but a 2017 first-round pick to the Toronto Raptors, so far this season, counting tonight's stats as well, is shooting 21% from the floor, including 11% from three-point. And, as I mentioned earlier, he's shooting more field goal attempts than guys like Giannis and Jabari, and Middleton only had 6 field goal attempts tonight. What's alarming to me isn't that he's been so terrible. I didn't think he was going to be great. What's alarming to me is that a guy can get that many shot attempts up, and Jason Kidd can't look to the bench and say, let's give Rashad Vaughn a shot. Let's get somebody in there that...
Damian Inglis.
Somebody. You can't allow these guys, and especially playing them together. What more can... is Rashad Vaughn just not showing up to practice? Why can't he get on the floor when these... more so Vasquez, but him and Bayless aren't particularly playing great basketball at this moment.
I think this is one of these things with Kidd where it's like, you're not going to put an untested rookie into the fire like that, but, Vasquez has been horrible. He has been awful. He's atrocious to watch. He's slow. He pounds the ball. Doesn't initiate the offense until there's only 14 seconds left on the shot clock. It's disgusting. I don't know what we saw in this guy. I know, Chuck, you had looked up his stats last year, and Jake, you mentioned 21% field goal and 11% three-point shooting. Last year, he did have a pretty respectable average.
Yeah, he shot just under 41% total from the field, just under 38% from 3, which is respectable. But yeah,
I think so. We can expect that.
He should
maybe
get closer to norms.
Yeah,
he should get closer to norms.
Yeah,
you hope.
But even so, just if the shots were falling, he's still turning the ball over. He's still kind of slowing the offense down to a snail's pace. Like, I don't see what they saw in this guy to bring him here, and.
Well, and there were reports that this was a Jason Kidd move.
Yeah,
he wanted Vasquez. He said, "Go out and get him for me." So, it comes into play sometimes. I look at the Packers with Ted Thompson, and he'll draft a guy that ends up not looking great, and they hold on to him because maybe it's an ego thing. This was my move. Mm-hmm. This is going to look bad on me if I go to Rashad Vaughn. If I, And another thing I wanted to bring up too is I hear a lot of people say, "Well, we'll be fine once OJ Mayo comes back." Is he coming back? Because he's been listed as day-to-day pretty much the whole season, and there hasn't really been any updates on him. That's starting to worry me a little bit, too, because, if he was healthy, you'd have 2 guys that I'd want to see getting minutes over Vasquez at this point in time.
Yeah, and whether, if Carter Williams was healthy and if Mayo was healthy, I don't think Vasquez gets 10 shots tonight. I feel like it's kind of a different story, but, he was 0 for 10 tonight. Why did he shoot?
0 for 7 on 3-pointers.
Why did he shoot the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th shot? Why was he even in there to have the opportunity to do it? He sucks. The funny thing, too, is, back in the Squad 6 days, Jake had a habit of giving players that he didn't like, his least favorite players, the first nickname of Poop. So it was Poop Ridenour and Poop Gooden. And the other day I was sitting at the game and I was thinking I should text Jake and find out who the Poop is this year. And we were playing Philly and Vasquez, and I'm like, wait, I know it's Poop Vasquez. This guy sucks. So I'm totally willing for him to turn this around and to come around on him, but it's not just the shitty shooting that's bugging me. It's everything else he does. It's kind of the lazy passing, the turnovers, the lack of defense, the not initiating the offense until way later in the shot clock than you'd want.
You bring that up, the not initiating the offense. We had to, and I didn't count them, but it had to be near 10 times this game where we were jacking up a shot right as the shot clock expired. Yeah. I think we only had one that turned into a shot clock expiration violation, but there were a lot of bad shots hoisted up right as the shot clock was expiring, whether it was by Vasquez or there was one where John Henson threw it off to Giannis, who had to throw up a off-balance three-pointer. There were a lot of bad shots because our offense was not gelling tonight in terms of ball movement early in the clock. And, I don't know if MCW coming back, is that going to instantly, with him being the starter and hopefully Ennis then would be moved to the secondary role, maybe that'll cure it. But we haven't really gotten any updates on MCW after that injury, which didn't look all that good initially. So I'm not holding my breath on him coming back soon. And no one knows what's up with Mayo. Hamstring day to day. Seemed lingering hamstring injury, kind of like Clay Matthews, it sounds like. Hopefully he's back soon, but no one really knows.
The thing, I can't get over this. The thing with Vasquez is, like, he's like, got this herky-jerky style. He's like slower than you expect him to be, and that's how he gets these shots off or hoisted up. It's like he reminds me of one of those sidearm pitchers where it's like they're not good pitchers, but like you're just not used to seeing that, and that's why these guys have even ever succeeded. But like the guy sucks. Don't put him in the game. Like enough.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel, Nick?
Nick
is almost spitting here in real life. He's pretty furious.
I'm so
right
sick
now.
of watching that guy.
He has the reputation of being an arrogant guy. I remember watching him in college, and he was one of these guys that just annoyed the shit out of you when you watched him. Like, you're hitting some shots, but it's because your team is garbage, and you're the number one option kind of thing. But I will say this for Grievous: so far, he's saying all the right things to the media. He seems like, he's happy to be here, and he's owned up a little bit to not playing well and trying to get, his game back to where it needs to be. But I do have a question, and it's one thing that has always annoyed me with coaches or coaching in general, is you talked about seniority in that he's the veteran, and that's why he's playing over Rashad Vaughn. But it does still annoy me, and Kid will figure it out. He's a good coach, but it still annoys me that say Rashad Vaughn started this game, there's no way he even gets to 10 shot attempts because Kid would probably take him out after he missed the first 3. Mm-hmm. So that's what I really don't care for. If somebody's not playing well, it doesn't matter how many years that they played, get somebody else in there, see if you can create something new. Let's not go all negative with the second unit, because there is some positives to be had early on. John Henson made his return last night against the Knicks, which he had missed the first few games, and had an incredible game off the bench. And really, I think a lot of it was to do with the bad officiating and the Knicks kind of pissing him off. There was a point in the game where it looked like he was pissed off. Somebody pulled him down by his jersey, and he didn't get a call. And then he just took over the game both offensively and defensively. He ended up with, 22 points. 22 points, 5 boards, and a couple big blocks down the stretch.
He got 3 blocks in the box score. I saw a 4th one that they didn't credit him in the box score. I thought he had 4. I know sometimes they go back and adjust the box score, so maybe down the season when they give that a final review, maybe he'll get an extra block. But, yeah, his jersey, they were pulling on his jersey the whole game there. And we could see it with the camera. The announcers could see it, and apparently everyone could see it but the refs. I'm not one. Normally, I understand officiating basketball games. I've done grade school basketball officiating, which is pretty easy because the kids are slow as can be. But once you get to the NBA,
Chuck was ripping on the kids. Dude, you suck. What the fuck shot was that?
These athletes, they move so fast, and everything is so quick. And if you're not in the exact right spot, you might not see something. You think you saw something or you did. And I get that. And I'm okay with missed calls, whether it's calling a foul when it doesn't happen or missing a foul. It happens. They're not going to be perfect. All I ask for is consistency. And when a guy's jersey is being pulled, there's no way the refs didn't see that. I mean, it was blatant, and it was every time down the court. And he complained about it a couple times, and it kept happening. And John Henson is a pretty mild-mannered guy. If you've ever heard him interviewed, I mean, dude was basically, it's no secret he was, there's a whole racist incident in Whitefish Bay, and he still was chill enough to go shop at the store after they basically treated him like a second-class citizen, which I don't think I would have done. I would have been even more pissed than he was. I don't have that kind of calmness about me. So for John Henson to get pissed off the way he was, The first
It was
couple
fun
times
to see. I was happy to see it.
The first couple times, he was complaining to the refs, but they didn't get us a good replay on FS Wisconsin. So I was, they were terrible with the replays last night. But I assumed because of his personality, I said if he's that animated, it probably is a legit thing. He doesn't get that way.
And even before it was happening to Henson, I mean, like.
Oh God, Monroe
Lopez was just all over, and like they
mugged.
weren't calling it ever. Like,
Monroe was also
Monroe was
mugged
getting
yesterday.
frustrated as well. So why they let Robin Lopez get away with basically just pushing people around when they're trying to those were all fouls.
It's clear the Bucks have a long ways to go yet as far as getting the respect from the officials because even a shit team like the New York Knicks are still getting the benefit of the doubt, but.
And one more thing before we move on from this, that really yesterday against the Knicks, so that's the game against the Knicks on November 6th. That was the first game that Greg Monroe really had an off night this entire season. He's averaging the 20 points and 8 boards roughly. So that was his only off night so far this season, and having Henson to be able to come in his first game off the injury and do that was pretty impressive. He's a large reason why we are able to beat the Knicks there.
Sure, and then you look at tonight, and I tweeted this out last night during the game. I was at Buck Life Podcast, by the way, on Twitter. That it's great to see that if Monroe can have a really terrible night, you bring in Henson and he has a really great night. And I think that has the potential to be the best center tandem in the NBA if you're looking at as far as the depth of your top two. And you look at tonight now, Henson kind of had a so-so game, didn't play a lot. But Monroe came through, so it's good to see that if one isn't going, you can go to the other. And in a league that has so few good centers, we have the luxury of two pretty good ones. Now, Henson, I think there's this term that's being thrown around as the playoff Henson because he was a completely different man in the playoffs last year against Chicago. So people were texting me like, I'm glad we have playoff Henson this year. But I think we saw kind of tonight and last night what you're going to get with John Henson. Sometimes you're going to get a player that looks like maybe the cusp of being an all-star type player, and sometimes just a fringe rotational big. He's still young enough to where the consistency is going to come, but I was just glad to see him finally get a little bit fired up. And if whoever we're playing, if they want to pull his jersey, by God, do it. Do it every time. Get this man pissed off. Do it to Monroe, too.
And tonight he had some foul trouble. He didn't even play 9 minutes tonight. He had 3 fouls, so he didn't really get a chance to get in any rhythm tonight, which that foul trouble, that's one of those things of being a young player. Giannis struggles with it. It's just one of those things he's going to have to learn to deal with, especially as a big man. It's very easy as a big man when you've got guards driving into the lane, you're trying to block someone from posting up, and you're in a position to give a foul probably more often than your wing players.
And one more thing, Johnny O'Brien, I got to eat some crow here. I mean, early on, I think I said earlier in the year I was a little surprised he made the team. And I called him maybe the worst player in the NBA. I guess I need to be a little bit more cautious when talking about young players because while he hasn't been a world beater, he's looked like a rotational player in these last few games, and he's hitting the mid-range jumper that I hate when he takes. He's getting boards, and other than Henson against the Knicks, I think Johnny O'Brien his play in the third quarter the Knicks were coming, and we weathered the storm because of Johnny O'Brien, which is strange to say. So maybe he can get a little bit more consistent and stay in the rotation once we're healthy.
It's been fun to kind of watch Bucks Twitter, like all of the Bucks fans out in the Twitterverse, just kind of collectively kind of recalibrating our understanding or expectation for Johnny O'Brien. And if we would have recorded this podcast last night, I think we would have maybe led with this topic because he was so big last night, and now tonight he just kind of played so-so, and it wasn't anything spectacular. I think that's what we're going to get from him. We're going to get games where he makes those hustle plays. He's playing hard. He can hit that mid-range jumper. I never want us to shoot too many mid-range jumpers, but he can knock it down if he gets it. And it's been fun to watch him look a little bit more like an NBA player.
Yeah, one thing about him, every game this season, he's out there busting his ass. He's given not to be too cliche, but 110%. You know, that's the one thing he's given. And I just looked up his total numbers on the season. He's 14 for 29. Coming into the game tonight, he was shooting exactly 50% on the year. He went 3 for 7 tonight. So just a hair under 50% on the season. But you know, if you're going to get a guy shooting 50% on the season, and he hasn't taken a single 3-pointer, so he's not overextending his range to where it's uncomfortable for him. He's sticking in that 15-foot range, you know, wherever he is, and he's hitting them at a good clip. And
I'm all about sticking it in.
That'll help stretch the defense a little bit. We still need some 3-point shooters to pull it all the way out to the perimeter, but he's getting some hustle rebounds, offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, whatever. And in limited minutes, he's being a contributor off the bench. And I think we all agree, you know, going into the season, last year he looked like probably the worst player on the NBA, you know, in the entire league.
He was John Brockman levels of bad, which, by the way, Chuck Schilling once told me that after the Bucks acquired John Brockman, he was going to get a John Brockman jersey. And my response was, Chuck, you can't do that. Chuck, don't do that.
We're still waiting for that John Brockman. But, like, you know, and like, this isn't to O'Brien or whatever, but, like, you know, like, because Johnny's been working hard on the boards, but, you know, he's not the tallest guy or whatever. We've sucked on the boards this year.
Yes.
I mean, we've been pretty wretched.
We've been out-rebounded in most of the games. Yeah, I mean...
And I don't know, I mean, like, I don't know how that gets better. I mean, like, really and truly, the two positions where our length is like most prominently, you know, point guard and shooting guard. That's where we've got the taller guys. You know, Giannis is a tall dude, but like when you're talking about Jabari at power forward and, you know, Moose, like those guys aren't any taller than the guys, you know, they're playing against. So I don't know what the hell's happening, but I've kind of been disgusted with the rebounding this season.
I think a lot of it might have to do with just how they play defense. Again, you look at Giannis, his wingspan is like, you know, 9'7" or whatever it is. So far this year, and it's probably going to continue.
It might be 12 feet arms.
Yeah, at this point.
You know.
But I think when you have him guarding perimeter players for the most part, he's away from the basket. If Giannis was playing a little bit more on the block, I think he'd be snatching up some more rebounds. Monroe I've been happy with as a rebounder, but you're right. It seems like it's not necessarily, to me, a length or like a physical profile type thing. Mm-hmm. It honestly, it looks like an effort thing. It looks like a fundamental thing.
Yeah.
It's boxing out.
Yeah.
It's
Middleton,
particularly against the Knicks. The
Middleton
boxing out
has been awful. Like he should be getting these rebounds, and he's not.
Yeah, we've had a lot of problems boxing out. We saw that against the Knicks. Porzingis was able to go in there and get several easy putbacks.
Yeah.
And talk about a player, you know, not to get too much off of the Bucks here, but he looks like he could be a really good player. I know we talked about Minnesota and Karl Anthony Towns and Wiggins and all that last week, but Porzingis, for a 7'3" dude, he's got some moves. And
I saw somebody on Twitter call him a mobile Yao Ming, and if that's the case, good God, watch out, League. It's I hate that the Knicks have him too.
Yeah, I do as well. You know,
better than the Lakers having him though. D'Angelo Russell doesn't look great.
So not to get too off topic there, but yeah, yesterday.
No, I'm off topic. I want to go back.
There are quite a few boxing out problems, and it was very apparent last night with Porzingis getting several just easy run by 3 Bucks players to just get a put back dunk off of a rebound when there's no reason we shouldn't be there getting that with all our guys.
Fair enough. Before we end this thing with some arena talk, I got 2 quick hitters here. Number 1, Johnny O'Brien. If he's going to continue to be a good player, can we all agree that instead of J.O.B. that everybody wants to call him, I like Johnny Irish personally. And number 2, Jason Kidd, please listen to our podcast and please more Tyler Ennis and less Bayless and Vasquez. But let's talk about the arena, the new arena, our current arena. First off, earlier today they had the, what do they call it? The Own the Future tailgate party.
Yep.
Which was well attended.
Build the Future.
Build the Future tailgate party. It was kind of, they called it the unofficial groundbreaking for the new arena because they're not actually groundbreaking till spring, but this was kind of the unofficial party to ground break.
Sure. The big thing coming from today, though, was that more renderings were released as far as what the interior of the new arena. Again, it was just 2, which I think this is all a strategy by the Bucks to keep this timeline very conservative and kind of slow moving, because the arena is opening a year later than they anticipated that it would be or that they wanted it to be. So I think we're going to see more of this where you get a little bit at a time just to keep people talking about it. But the renderings look great. It appears, just from the pictures, the lower level is so much bigger than it is at the Bradley Center, and the amount of seats, it looks like 3 times the amount of seats in the lower level than there is in the upper level, which is such a smart thing to do. And now that we're not going to be playing in a hockey arena, it makes a lot more sense. But it also featured, and we're going to tweet these pictures out and put them up on our Facebook page, but it looked like 3 different almost standing room only decks with some natural light coming in.
I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if anyone was at. Unfortunately, I was down in Chicago at a prior.
Yeah, none of us were able to make it to this,
so I couldn't make it. Something I had scheduled long before the Bucks announced this. There was some deck up in the 3rd level where people were standing, and it was above the luxury suites. You could see them in this picture. That was the only part of the picture that confused me, and I don't know if the Bucks gave any explanation at the event itself. I couldn't see anything on the website that explained this. So if anyone knows, feel free to let us know. Those of you that know me in person, via Twitter, Facebook, whatever, we're available. But yeah, the pictures look good. It's certainly exciting. I think, like you said, they're kind of going on a conservative timeline here, and I think they'll just kind of slowly trickle out information, because then you're constantly talking about it. How many episodes, and I don't think the Bucks are listening to our podcast necessarily, but how many episodes have we talked about the arena? We talk about it a little bit. Almost every episode we've talked about the arena at least a little bit. So they're keeping it in the news because we're talking about new renderings this time, and maybe we're going to be recording more regularly. This is the first time we've gone every week, but so we're probably not going to talk about it every week. But they are doing a good job of trickling out information to keeping it relevant.
Sure, as long as we have something new to talk about with the arena, we'll definitely.
We're all excited about it. That's the bottom line. There's. Who wouldn't be excited about a state-of-the-art new arena?
Well, and then the other rendering that they showed was a picture of the concourse, which looks like it has a lot of natural light coming in, a lot of escalators and stairs that just lead to many levels. It just looks cool. And I saw kind of like a semicircle bar that's going to be right on the main level, again with just a lot of color. The thing with the renderings, it continues to make it more real, and I still don't think it's set in for me. It was such a battle in my eyes to get this arena done and to really change people's minds. And now that we see the renderings, this is happening, and it's pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, one thing with the natural light that you mentioned, that the Bradley Center, sometimes when you're in there, it feels like a big stone tomb almost. It's
like a prison to me.
Yeah, there's stone everywhere around you. It's quiet. It's So this idea of natural light and outside light, sunlight, it's infinitely better than what we've got with the Bradley Center, because other than the one side of the Bradley Center where there's the windows, the rest of the thing is just a giant hunk of cement, and I'm looking forward to seeing even more renderings, because these two they kind of whet my appetite.
It was very smart. Leaves you wanting more. Exactly.
And I have to imagine they have more. I think there's no way they're not further along the design process than they're letting out public. And I know some of that is the outside. They need to get final approval from the city to sign off on the final outside design before we're going to see any of that. But yeah, so that's coming, and I'm pretty excited. And this definitely made me hungrier for more.
The thing that I like most about the internal stadium rendering, the second of the 2 pictures released, is just, it looks like they're doing the thing they do in Brooklyn. And maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but where they really light up the court and leave everything else dark, it really gives it that stage effect.
Madison Square Garden.
That kind of.
The Lakers do as well, don't they?
No, I think the Staples is pretty lit up. I think.
Okay.
If you watch the Bucks play against Brooklyn or New York, you can really just tell, it looks like they're on a stage, and that's how you create an atmosphere, right? You want to have that kind of feel. I'm kind of architectural nerd. I love that kind of stuff. So seeing these renderings are just super exciting to me, and to think that we're going to have this year is awesome.
Me being a fan, like, I want to pay attention to what's going on in the court, not like the old dude that's 2 rows in front of me taking 45 minutes to take his fucking coat off, and the 7 people trying to cut across because they just got their nachos, but whatever. So, but Chuck, you said you were hungry for more. And this is a perfect segue into what I want to end this on. You both went to the Philadelphia game, right?
Yes.
That's what I heard?
Yeah.
So, Chuck, you were able to sample what we talked about in the last podcast, the Milwaukee dog. Can you explain to our listeners what that is?
Yeah, so now Jake mentioned this last time, and I hadn't even heard of it. Hot dog with cheese curds. So fat, yeah. So I've now had this thing. So to me, it was pretty much exactly what I expected, which was a little underwhelming. Starting with, I like a good food. My problem with this was primarily you have a giant pretzel dog with a foot-long regular hot dog. The bun is too big. Jake making sound effects there. So anyways, the pretzel bun itself is too big for the hot dog. You have a little thin hot dog. A pretzel bun of that size is better for your thicker sausage, a bratwurst or a Polish, something along those lines. The hot dog is too small to support that size of bun. I don't particularly like nacho cheese on my hot dogs. Nacho cheese is good on chips, that sort of thing. On a hot dog, it just kind of didn't really add anything. And then they put, I think, 6 or 7 cheese curds on top of them. They weren't great cheese curds. They were just run-of-the-mill cheese curds. So overall, I will never get that again. It was, it's a good idea, poorly executed in my mind.
I'm still gonna get it at the first.
Well, and maybe you'll have once you have it, you can come back with a different review. Maybe you'll think differently. I just think the too much bun, nacho cheese with a hot dog isn't my favorite combination. I'd prefer a cheddar or an American cheese with my hot dog. And then, the cheese curds were nothing to write home about.
Nick, you also have a nice little food review for us. You reviewed Sobelman's, am I right? For which website?
Yeah, it's the website. I'm going to be writing some food reviews at the Bradley Center. I have a 10-game pack this year, so I'll be going to 10 games, and I'll be doing a food review at each game for for the website creamcitycentral.com. So you can check out my review of the Sobelman's Burger on Cream City Central. But I will say here, I love Sobelman's. The burger's great, and I think it's a pretty near facsimile of what you can get at the actual place, which is saying a lot.
Usually that's not the case when you have a crossover type deal.
That was my first question to Nick when I love a good Sobelman's burger, and my first question when I heard he had it was, how does it compare to the bar? And
it was good. But if you go and you read my review, there was some snafus with the ordering and stuff like that. That was just kind of ridiculous. So, check out my article, and I'll be posting my articles about the things I'm trying on Twitter.
What are you going to be reviewing next?
I don't know. I feel like.
it won't be the Milwaukee dog because you don't like cheese, so you're not going to do that.
I'm probably just going to wander the concourse before the games and just kind of put my eye on whatever looks good and try it, I think.
Okay.
Well, and kudos to the Bucks for even having new options.
Totally. Weird that, such a prominent Milwaukee place like Sobelman's is up in the 400 level, though. Even when I heard about this, I was a little bit surprised. I thought they'd give them a little bit more primary.
Yeah, when I saw...
Sushi and calamari on the first level.
When I saw where it was, I thought it was weird, but it is a nice little, the glass there, they've got the Sobelman's logo all over it. It is a nice... Even though it's up on the 4th floor, it's a very nice setup they've got up there, in my opinion.
Well, it's a space. It's a nice sized space, but I mean, they've done nothing with it. It's completely dull and drab. This was announced. I know you guys talked about it on the last show. I mean, this was announced 2 weeks before the season started. So maybe they didn't have the time or whatever to make it look anything. I mean, it looks like the interior of the Bradley Center, which is drab.
Yay!
And I've got one more thing to go back to the arena here. I was talking about these fans perched up on the thing. Apparently on the website here it says this is a one-of-a-kind fan club perched above the seating exterior the dynamic experience for fans of Bucks basketball.
So maybe that's
that is Squad 6.
Yeah, maybe it's Squad 6. I mean, it looks like seats up there. Now, I was looking on my phone and iPad before, and I couldn't zoom in as much as I can on my computer. So there's definitely some seats up there, and they're pretty high. And it looks like that's also natural light right there in the corners of the arena. And even some cream bricks here.
So,
and I couldn't really see this on my phone before, but that's a nice touch with the cream bricks as a siding there.
So I think what you're saying is you hope that our friend Dan, likes heights.
Yeah. Hope he's not afraid of heights.
Yeah.
I
Bring the binoculars, Dan.
I don't think that's for the fans.
Bring the megaphone.
But who knows? I don't know what their plan is there. But yeah, I did want to point out they do specify that they call them signature towers and one-of-a-kind fan club perched above the seating area. So apparently, I'm assuming there's going to be 2 on either side. So there's 2 in this picture that we can't see. I'm assuming it's symmetrical.
Well, and given the cream bricks, you got to think the creams will be up there. That's what we're calling the Cream City Clashes here. Just the creams.
Right up by the cream bricks. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
All right, that's going to do it for the Buck Life podcast. Stay tuned for another episode, probably coming next week. And thanks, Nick, for coming on. Hopefully we get to have you on again soon.
And hopefully we're winning more games. Those of you who are fans and listening know the schedule, but I wanted to just recap. Between now and next time, we've got at home against Boston on Tuesday. Get out to the game. The Philadelphia game that I went to Wednesday was a fairly sparse crowd. Hopefully those are starting to get bigger.
Get your asses to the arena.
A back-to-back after Boston, we go straight out to Denver, playing the altitude on Wednesday. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jabari there with his conditioning, because I can't imagine he's in perfect shape. I mean, I know he's been working out a lot, so we'll see what happens there. And then at home Saturday against Cleveland. I'm sure that will be a big crowd. Hopefully a lot of Bucks fans and not a lot of LeBron fans, but I kind of feel there might be some of the latter.
Well, hopefully next time we talk to you, we're in the midst of a 7-game winning streak. But we'll see you next time, Bucks fans.